Welcome to Hardin Life Live. We are a family of coaches and counselors, and we love taking 10 minutes with you every week to give you some tips to help you live your best life from both a therapeutic and a biblical perspective. And you may have noticed we're all sort of decked in our Valentine's red, and it's perfect because we are doing our month focus on love and relationships. And I was thinking, we just actually led a couples workshop this past weekend. And so, Audrey, when your topic came in about, how to know if you're in a toxic relationship, that just the title alone captured me because what it implies is you may be in one and not know it. Which I really see that even in the work we do.
Well, yeah, that can happen a lot of times when it's a gradual build of toxicity in the relationship. Maybe the person put on a great presentation up front, or they had good intentions, but if they're not doing their emotional work over time, the toxic behaviors start to come out, the controlling behaviors, the manipulative behaviors, the passive aggressive behaviors start to come out, and before you know it, you're in a toxic relationship. I think that's one way, the gradual, but the other way that it can happen is it's familiar. Maybe you're used to having that toxic dynamic in your home, and whether it was you observed it between your parents, maybe they didn't have a great relationship, maybe in the way that you related with your siblings, or dad to son, mom to daughter, just parent to child in general. So it's familiar when you go and have friendships, you have dating relationship, marriages, and so the toxic nature of the relationship doesn't really seem that far off. It's your normal. So this blog I really wrote to help bring awareness to even ask yourself, do I have toxic relationships in my life? How do I know?
Well, and again, like what I thought of is that so much about being in a relationship that's nurturing and a safe relationship is to be seen, to be understood, to feel secure, that there's a connection. And so oftentimes, there's not enough self-awareness on our part to say no, that's not acceptable behavior. We keep absorbing it. And that's what people in toxic relationships do. They don't feel even aware enough to realize they're not in a safe relationship, one which is promoting their personal growth and personal identity.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think, we use the illustration a lot that relationships, you're not supposed to be in a relationship when one person is one up and one person is one down. Because this one up person's always right, telling you what to do. And the person in the one down, and I think is what you're saying, is the absorbing person. Okay. Or they feel tension from this person and they just lose themselves.
Yeah.
And they just keep living this dynamic. But healthy people really feel safe and can look eye to eye, and I'm free to be me with this other person. And I love there were several points you had that really revealed to me, because I'd been in a friendship where I definitely did not feel free to be me. I sort of walked on the eggshells, and I would do this little dance. And yet, had I just known that this wasn't healthy, that would have helped me.
Totally. I think that's one of the biggest signs to know if you're in a toxic relationship, if you don't feel the freedom to be fully yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And it sounds like that was the case with you in your friendship. And that's what I also want to point out. It's not just with romantic relationships, with marriages. It can also be with friendships. It can be with coworkers and bosses. It can be with family members. And, who has who had the family they grew up in that's like, oh, don't upset mama, make sure mama's always happy. Or you grew up in a family, it's like, don't make dad angry, don't do it. And so if I grew up with that messaging, then I'm naturally going to be prone to taking my cues from them instead of getting to be fully myself, a powerful person, not a powerless person, where I can say what I think, what I want, what I need, so that I get the opportunity to be fully known and fully loved, as you were mentioning, Dad.
Well, I've told the story like so many times. We lose our ability to say no in toxic relationships, that we continue to breathe that kind of toxicity. And in the story that I was going to tell is just a short version of it. A lady comes in years ago. She'd been married for more than 30 years. She says, I'm not here to work on my marriage. And she just tells this really sad story of how everything was about her husband. Their sons didn't want to come home. And she said this to kind of sum up what she was experiencing. She said, I've lost myself so much so that I don't even know how to go into Baskin Robbins and order ice cream.
Oh.
She had done so much of what he wanted to do. She had complied. She'd given up herself, that over the years, she had completely lost herself, so much so that she didn't even have enough autonomy, if you will, to go into a Baskin Robbins and decide for herself what kind of ice cream she wanted. She had to say, well, Fred's not here to tell me what kind I should get, so I don't even know.
Right. Right. Well, again, the picture that the Bible gives us in what healthy relationships look like are sharpening relationships. And, a sword doesn't get sharpened on a piece of fruit. A sword doesn't get sharpened on, a toy looking sword. It takes iron to iron. And to be iron, you have to have a clear sense of self and a clear identity. And that is the model that we have at the body of Christ, is to becoming more like Christ, loving one another as Christ would love. And he spoke the truth in love. In John 1, it says that he was, that we are to be full of grace and full of truth, like he was. And when we operate in that, as you were saying, Mom, the one down position, there's no way to sharpen or to communicate truth. We're just in the grace mode, like hoping we don't get hit. And if we're in the one up position, we don't want to hear the truth. We're afraid of it. We don't want to acknowledge the energy that it might take to really change. And it's working for us as long as the people in the one down position are allowing it. And I think that it's just, I hope that this blog really gives us all a sense of pause to just consider my relationships. Ultimately, are they God honoring? Because if we're not in God honoring relationships, we're hurting our witness at the body of Christ. Like, why would you want to be a Christian if you see this toxicity?
It's kind of a tricky thing. Am I in a God honoring relationship? A lot of times people who find themselves in toxic relationships keep over spiritualizing and exaggerating this idea is I'm God honoring, I'm going to hang in here. I want to honor God. I want to honor God. I want to honor God. And it's like, what they really need to do to honor God is to love well, and loving well is to say no to evil. And yet we over spiritualize it and think that honoring God is just continuing to allow the evil or bad behavior. And in love, oftentimes is the willingness to say no. And even to my friend that I talked about earlier, I said, you have not loved Fred well. I want you to go home and love Fred. I want you to. And she looked at me like, are you kidding? It's just guilty loving Fred. And I said, no, you misunderstand. What it means to love Fred in a way that you have not loved Fred is to say, no, we're not going to watch what you want to watch. We're not going to eat just what you want to eat. And that's what had happened to her.
Yeah, like I get to be a self too. Well, I would love for y'all to stay tuned next week. We're going to do a part 2 of this blog and Hardin Life Live on what to do when you discover you have toxic relationships in your life.
One thing I just want to add, Audrey, I think so good, even in light of what Dad said.
Okay.
For those of you who can't say no to someone, you might be a prime candidate for being in a toxic relationship. So start digging there. And as Audrey said, go to our website, hardinlife.com, read her blog, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week and finding out what we do